The music was already playing when I pulled into the parking lot. I could hear it through the car windows, some upbeat wedding song I didn't recognize, something modern and bright. My daughter was asleep in the back seat, her cheek pressed against the door, her little mouth slightly open. She'd been so excited on the drive over that she'd worn herself out. 7 years old, and she'd spent the whole week asking me if she could wear her pink shoes to Daddy's wedding. I told her yes. I told her she'd look beautiful. I told her everything was going to be fine. I believed maybe half of that. My name is not important right now. What's important is that I was 31 years old, sitting alone in a parking lot outside a country club I'd never been allowed inside during the 5 years I was married to the man celebrating tonight. Marcus had always said the membership was his family's thing. I understood later that what he meant was that I was not considered part of that family. Not really. Not fully. Not ever. I unbuckled my seatbelt and sat there for another minute. I want to be honest with you. I almost drove away. I had my hand back on the key. My daughter shifted in her sleep and made a small sound, and I looked at her in the rearview mirror, her pink shoes already on, her hair in 2 careful braids I'd done that morning, and I took my hand off the key. I was here because Lily was here. That was the only reason. Marcus and I had divorced 2 years earlier, quietly and without much ceremony, which I suppose was appropriate given how quietly and without much ceremony our marriage had ended from the inside long before the paperwork made it official. We had Lily together. That meant we would always be connected, whether either of us liked it or not. His mother, Patricia, liked it significantly less than not. Patricia had never approved of me. Not when Marcus brought me home the first time, not when we got engaged, not when we had Lily, not when I learned to cook his favorite meals or remembered every one of his family's birthdays or showed up to every holiday with a gift in hand and a smile on my face. I was a kindergarten teacher from a small town in Ohio. Patricia had wanted someone from their world, their country club world, their charity gala world, their second homes in Hilton Head world. I was not that. I had never pretended to be that. And for Patricia, that was an unforgivable offense. Marcus, for his part, loved me in the way that some men love things they are slightly ashamed of, privately, and less so over time. When his mother would make a comment at dinner about my background, about my job, about my clothes, he would shift in his chair and say nothing. When she called me the teacher instead of my name, he would clear his throat and change the subject. He never said, "That's my wife. Please show her respect." Not once. Not in 5 years. Diane was the woman he married after me. She came from the right kind of family. She'd gone to the right school. Her father was a colleague of Marcus's father, Robert. I heard through mutual friends that Patricia had cried happy tears at the engagement announcement, the specific detail that I was not supposed to know but did anyway. The wedding invitation for Lily had come through Marcus's attorney, which I thought said everything. Lily is welcome to attend the reception. Please confirm her arrival time. Not my arrival time? Just Lily's. As if a 7-year-old could be dropped off at a country club like a package. I had written back, politely, that I would bring Lily and stay for the dinner portion and then take her home by 8. His attorney wrote back. Marcus did not write back himself. Lily woke up when I opened her door. She blinked at me with those big dark eyes she got from Marcus's side, and she said, "Are we here?" And I said yes, and she looked at the country club lit up in the evening and said, "It's so pretty, Mama." And I fixed her braid and said, "It really is, baby." Inside, the lobby smelled like gardenias and money. A woman in a black dress with a clipboard met us at the door, checked Lily's name, smiled at her and only at her, and said, "Right this way." She led us through a set of double doors and into the main reception hall. I want to describe that room to you because it matters. Round tables with white linens and gold centerpieces. Probably 20 tables in total, each one lit by candles. A dance floor in the center. A band setting up at the far end. At the front of the room, a long head table where Marcus and Diane and the wedding party would sit. The closer you were to that table, the more you mattered. That was the architecture of the room. That was the message. The clipboard woman led us to the back. Not just toward the back. I mean, she walked us past table after table, past couples greeting each other, past an open bar, past a table I recognized with some of Marcus's college friends, and then past the next table, and the next one, until we were essentially against the far wall, near the corridor that led to the kitchen. Our table had 8 seats, and we were the first ones there. There were 4 place cards. I picked up the one nearest to me. It had Lily's name on it. I picked up the next one. A name I didn't recognize. The third one. Another unfamiliar name. The 4th place card said Guest of Lily. Guest of Lily. I was listed as a guest of my 7-year-old daughter. Lily was looking at the centerpiece, touching a flower with one careful finger. She hadn't seen the place cards. I put mine back down. I sat. I smiled at her. I said, "Do you want to go find the dessert table before dinner starts?" And she said yes immediately, and we walked around the room while I collected myself. That was when I saw Patricia. She was at a table near the front, of course, in a deep burgundy dress, her silver hair set perfectly. She was laughing at something, her hand on the arm of the woman next to her. Then she turned and our eyes met across the room, and her smile didn't disappear, it just froze, slightly, like a photograph. She turned back to her conversation. Marcus's father, Robert, was standing near the bar. He saw me a moment after Patricia did. He gave me a small nod. Robert had always been different from his wife. Quieter, more careful with his words. I had never been able to tell, in 5 years, whether he actually liked me or simply tolerated me more gracefully than Patricia did. When Marcus and I divorced, Robert had sent me a handwritten note. It said, "I hope you and Lily are well. Please don't be a stranger." I'd read it twice and then put it in a drawer and thought about it more times than I'd admitted to anyone. Dinner was announced and we went back to our table. The 3 other seats filled in a cousin of Diane's I'd never met, and her husband, and an older woman who turned out to be Diane's former college roommate. They were perfectly nice people. They had no idea who I was. They asked me how I knew the couple, and I said Marcus and I had a daughter together, and they said, "Oh, how sweet." And then we talked about other things, and I cut Lily's chicken into smaller pieces. And I watched Marcus at the head table laughing with Diane and looking younger and easier than I had seen him look in the last 2 years of our marriage. I want to tell you, I felt nothing. I didn't feel nothing. But what I felt was not jealousy. I want to be clear about that. It was something older and quieter. The feeling of finally understanding the full shape of something you'd only seen part of before. I saw, sitting at that back table near the kitchen, exactly how little I had ever been seen. The toasts began. Marcus's best man spoke. Diane's sister spoke. Then Patricia stood up. Patricia had a gift for speaking. She was the kind of woman who could say something devastating and make it sound like a compliment, who could draw blood while smiling so warmly that the person bleeding almost thanked her. She spoke about Marcus finding the right partner. She spoke about Diane's grace, her background, her family, how perfectly she fit. And then she said, and I remember the exact words, "We always knew Marcus would find his way to exactly the right person. Some paths just take a little longer than others." And she smiled at the room, and the room laughed warmly, and only 3 people understood what she meant. Marcus looked at his wine glass. I looked at Lily, who was drawing on a napkin and not listening. And Robert, from across the room, looked at me. Not at Patricia, at me. I held it together. I am good at holding things together. I smiled at Lily's napkin drawing when she showed it to me. I said it looked like a butterfly. She said it was a horse. I said of course it was. It was a beautiful horse. About 40 minutes into dinner, Lily needed the bathroom. I took her down the corridor near our table. Convenient, I thought grimly, that we'd been seated next to the corridor, and on our way back, she saw a display of wedding photos near the lobby. Photos of Marcus and Diane, their engagement shoot, a photo of the whole family. Lily found herself in one of the photos, a casual shot from some family gathering I hadn't been at, and she said, "Mama, why am I in this picture but you're not?" And I said, "Because this is Daddy's special day, and these are pictures of his family." And she said, with a devastating clarity that only 7-year-olds can produce, "But aren't you his family too? You're my mama." I crouched down to her level. I held her face in my hands. I said, "I'm your family, Lily. You're my family. That's the one that matters most." I kissed her forehead. She seemed satisfied with that, or at least she moved on quickly the way kids do, asking about the dessert display she'd spotted earlier. But I stayed crouched for just a moment after she walked ahead. I pressed my fingers against the floor and I breathed. Because the thing Lily said, "Aren't you his family too?" That was the question. I had spent 5 years trying to answer by being better, quieter, more accommodating, more perfect. And the answer, it turned out, had always been no. Not to Patricia, not to any of them. I stood up and followed my daughter. Back at the table, I was checking the time on my phone. We'd leave at 8. We'd be home by 8:30. Lily would be in bed by 9 when I noticed that the table had shifted. Robert was no longer at his seat near the front. I scanned the room without meaning to and found him standing near the bar, but he wasn't drinking. He was holding his phone. He was looking at it with an expression I couldn't quite read from across the room. Then he looked up, found me, and looked back down at his phone. I thought nothing of it. I helped Lily get dessert. She chose the slice of wedding cake with the most frosting, which I let her have because some battles are not worth fighting. We sat back down and she ate with the focused devotion only children and the truly hungry can manage. Then the microphone crackled. It wasn't the band. It wasn't the DJ. It was Robert. He was standing near the small stage area, and he had picked up the microphone that had been used for toasts, and he cleared his throat once, and the room went quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when someone unexpected commands attention. "I'd like to say something," Robert said. His voice was calm. Robert always spoke calmly. I had never heard him raise his voice in 5 years. I've been at this table all evening thinking about what was said in the toasts tonight. About family. About finding the right path. About the people who deserve to be celebrated. Patricia, at her table, had put down her fork. Her smile was still in place, but her eyes were doing something different. "My son Marcus," Robert said, "is a good man in many ways. I love him. But I've watched things happen in this family for a long time that I should have spoken about sooner, and I've chosen, too often, to say nothing. I'm not going to do that tonight." The room was absolutely still. The kind of still where you can hear a chair shift. Robert reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. He held it up. "2 weeks ago," he said, "at the family dinner to celebrate this engagement, I was sitting in the next room, and I recorded something I think this room deserves to hear." Patricia moved. She pushed her chair back. Robert's eyes went to her, just for a second, and something in his look made her stop. He pressed play. The recording came through the speaker system. He had somehow connected it, or someone had helped him connect it. I didn't understand the technical part, and the audio was not perfect, but it was clear enough. It was Patricia's voice. And then the voice of Marcus's sister, whom I'd always called my sister-in-law even after the divorce because of Lily. And they were talking about me. Not about Diane. About me. Specifically, about making sure I understood my place at tonight's event. About the seating. About the place card. Guest of Lily that had been deliberate. I heard it in Patricia's voice, bright and pleased with herself. About the hope that I would take the hint and not make a scene, and about what a relief it would be when Lily was old enough that Marcus wouldn't have to deal with that situation anymore. That situation, I was 31 years old and I was a kindergarten teacher and I had spent 5 years trying to be enough for this family, and I was that situation. The recording ran for about 90 seconds. When it ended, the silence in the room was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Then Lily, who had been listening with her fork halfway to her mouth, put her fork down and looked at me and said quietly, "Mama, was that Grandma Patricia?" I put my hand over hers. "Yes, baby." She thought about this for a moment, the way she thought about hard things, with her brow slightly furrowed. Then she said, "That wasn't very nice." "No," I said. "It wasn't." Robert spoke again. "I want to be clear about what I'm not doing. I'm not trying to ruin my son's wedding. Marcus, I love you. Diane, welcome to this family. You've done nothing wrong tonight, and I mean that sincerely." He paused. "What I am doing is making it clear, in front of everyone here, that the treatment of, and he said my name, my actual name, not the teacher, not the situation, my name, and of my granddaughter Lily, has been unacceptable. It has been unacceptable for years, and it stops tonight." Patricia said, "Robert, this is not the—" "I have also," Robert said, without looking at her, "spoken with my attorney this week. The trust that was set up in Marcus's name, which Patricia has managed, is being restructured. Lily will have her own fund, in her name, accessible to her at 18, with no conditions and no interference." He looked across the room, past the white tables and the candles, and he looked directly at me. "She is my granddaughter. She has always been my granddaughter. I should have said that more clearly, more often, and I'm sorry I didn't." I realized, distantly, that my eyes were wet. I was not going to cry in this room. I pressed my thumb to the corner of my eye and I breathed. Lily had climbed slightly off her chair and was leaning against my arm the way she did when she was tired or overwhelmed, and I put my arm around her and held her there. Marcus, at the head table, had the expression of a man watching a car accident from a distance, frozen, disbelieving, unable to look away, and unable to do anything about it. Diane had her hand on his arm. She was looking at her new mother-in-law with an expression I could not fully read, but that contained something complicated, something that was not entirely surprise. Patricia stood up, her burgundy dress, her perfect silver hair. She said, "This is not the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," Robert said. "Because you made it so. You arranged this evening deliberately to humiliate someone who has done nothing to deserve it, except exist outside the boundaries of what you decided was acceptable. And you did it in front of a child. He said it without heat, which somehow made it worse. We'll talk at home. Tonight, I'd like everyone to enjoy the rest of the evening. He set the microphone down. He walked back to his seat. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip, as if he had simply commented on the weather. For about 10 seconds, no one moved. And then, with the kind of awkward, collective recovery that people manage at events because the alternative is too uncomfortable, conversations slowly resumed. The band exchanged looks and then started playing something gentle. Silverware began to clink again. Patricia sat back down. She picked up her fork. Her face was a wall. Lily looked up at me. Is Grandpa Robert okay? I think he's more than okay, I said. She considered this. Can I have more cake? I laughed. It came out slightly wet, but it was a real laugh. Yes, I said. You can have more cake. I want to tell you that I marched up to Patricia and delivered some devastating final line. I want to tell you I said something perfect and memorable. I didn't. That's not who I am. I am a kindergarten teacher from a small town in Ohio. I am a woman who braids her daughter's hair on Saturday mornings and drives to country clubs she wasn't made to feel welcome in because her daughter wants to wear her pink shoes to her father's wedding. I don't have devastating final lines. What I did was this. After the cake, after Lily had said goodbye to her father, who hugged her for a long time and looked at me over her head, with an expression that was genuinely hard to interpret, something between guilt and something else, I walked toward the exit. And Robert was standing near the door, as if he'd been waiting. He said, I owe you an apology that's long overdue. I said, You don't owe me anything. He shook his head. I do. I watched it happen for years. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself Patricia would soften over time. I told myself a lot of things that were easier than standing up. He looked at Lily, who was examining a vase of flowers near the door. She looks like Marcus did at that age, he said, but she has your kindness. I've always thought that. I didn't know what to say to that. I said, Thank you. For tonight. Thank you for staying, he said. I know it wasn't easy to walk in here. I took Lily's hand. She had detached a single flower from the vase, a small white one, and was holding it carefully. I decided not to address the flower theft. We walked out through the lobby and into the night air, and the music faded behind us, and the parking lot was cool and quiet and smelled like cut grass in summer. Lily skipped 2 steps ahead of me and then stopped and turned around. Mama, she said. Grandpa Robert said you did nothing wrong. He did, I said. She thought about this. Did you know that already? I looked at her, this small person in her pink shoes, holding a stolen flower, asking me a question that I had honestly not been able to answer cleanly for several years. I'm starting to, I said. She nodded, satisfied, and skipped the rest of the way to the car. I buckled her in. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I watched her hold the little white flower up to the window and look at it against the light. A week later, I got a call from Robert's attorney's office, a scheduling call, they said, to discuss the details of Lily's fund. I sat in my car in the school parking lot after that call, and I let myself feel it fully for the first time. Not the money was significant, but that was almost beside the point. What I felt was the specific, quiet, long-denied feeling of being seen, of having someone in that family say, in front of everyone, with a microphone, this person is real, this child is real. What was done to them was wrong. I had not known, until that moment, exactly how heavy I had been carrying the opposite of that feeling. The following Monday, I was back in my classroom, 22 5-year-olds learning their letters, and one of them brought a flower from home, a small yellow one, and put it on my desk without saying anything, just smiled at me and went to sit down. I looked at that flower for a second. I thought about Lily's stolen white flower in the window of my car. I thought about Robert's voice on the microphone, saying my name. I thought, some things take exactly as long as they take, and then they are done. Patricia has not spoken to me since the wedding. Marcus and I communicate through our co-parenting app, which is frankly easier for everyone. Robert calls on Lily's birthday and on random Tuesday evenings, and sometimes puts her on speakerphone with his old dog, Franklin, because Lily is obsessed with that dog. And I listen to her bark commands at a very patient golden retriever while I make dinner, and it is one of the most ordinary and perfect sounds I know. Lily keeps the flower on her windowsill. It dried out, of course. It's been weeks, but she hasn't thrown it away. I asked her once why she kept it, and she said, because Grandpa Robert said nice things and we were there, so I wanted to remember. 7 years old. I am regularly outwitted by a 7-year-old. I don't know what happened between Robert and Patricia at home that night. I don't know what was said, what deals were struck, what silences were kept. That part of the story doesn't belong to me. What belongs to me is smaller and more durable. My daughter in her pink shoes, the quiet of a parking lot, a man who stood up 30 seconds later than he should have, but stood up nonetheless, and the feeling finally, fully, of putting something down that I had been carrying for a very long time. I used to think that the opposite of being dismissed was being celebrated. I've changed my mind. The opposite of being dismissed is simply being acknowledged, being called by your name, being counted. It doesn't require a party or an announcement. It just requires one person, in one room, deciding that the silence has gone on long enough. Robert decided that. I will be grateful for the rest of my life. And if you're listening to this and you've been the person seated at the back table near the kitchen, near the corridor, away from the candles and the warmth, I want you to know that your name is on a place card somewhere. The right one, the one that counts. And somewhere, probably when you least expect it, someone who's been quiet too long is going to pick up a microphone. Wait for it.